Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session called Create Your Self-Portrait with Code. We're going to be learning how to draw a portrait using a programming language called JavaScript. And more specifically, we will be using a collection of JavaScript called processing.js. As a fun fact, the three drawings that you see on the title page were created using very similar steps to what we will follow today. We're going to start out with a quick survey. You should see a question appearing on your Zoom screen. I'll give you a moment to answer, and in the meantime, I'll do some introductions. My name is Edna. I work at NetApp. I am a software developer, and I will be one of the instructors leading the session today. We also have Daria. She will also be helping with the session and answering questions in the chat. Did you want to take a quick moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Daria. I've been with NetApp for 1 year. I'm a software engineer, and I'm really excited for today's sessions. You can put your questions in the chat, and we will be going through them one by one, and hopefully we'll be able to answer all your questions.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Daria said, you might get questions as we go along, so feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll try to cover as many as we can. Okay, I'm going to go over survey results. I will share them. And as you can see, it's a pretty even split. The two most popular answers were artistic and creative. I think that's very interesting. And in this session, we'll cover a little bit of each of those aspects. So there's definitely something for everyone. Okay, there's going to be a hands-on part of this session, but before we get to that, we have to go over some important ideas. The first is that we will be using a canvas to create our drawing, and it'll be helpful to think of the canvas as grid paper. Something like this is what we will see, but it'll be helpful to imagine the canvas having grid lines and the grid lines being numbered like this. One thing to notice is that 0 is at the top left corner, and as we move to the right, the numbers on the grid lines increase, and the numbers also increase as we move down. So it's going to be helpful to think of the canvas in this way because that's how the computer thinks of it. And the second important idea to keep in mind is that we can describe points on the canvas using X and Y coordinates. Some of you might be familiar to seeing X and Y coordinates in math class, for example, but in case you're not as familiar, let's go over what this means. X and Y coordinates are two numbers. And so it's the number of spots we need to move left or right. That's the X part. And the number of spots we need to move up or down. That's the Y part, to get to the point we're trying to describe if we start at 0. So let's see an example of what that looks like. If we wanted to describe a point in the middle of this grid using coordinates, how would we do that? We would start at 0, as we said, and then to get to the point, we move 3 spots to the right, and then 3 spots down, like this, and that's it. That's the coordinates for the point. We can describe it as 3, 3. So it's good to get in the habit of describing points with X and Y coordinates because we can build on this and we can use points to help us draw shapes, like lines. if we wanted to draw a line from the point 0, 4 to the point 6, 4, what would this look like? The first point would be here, and to get to that, we start at 0 again, and the x-coordinate is 0, which means we don't need to move anywhere left or right because we're already at 0. And the y-coordinate is 4, which means we move 4 down. So that's our first point. And the second point is 6, 4. So again, we go to 0, and to get to that point, we would move 6 spots to the right and 4 spots down. And that's the second point. And we can give the computer this information and ask it to draw a line between the point 0, 4 and 6, 4, and it will know exactly what to do, and the line will look something like this. So I want to pause here quickly to remind you that if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will try to monitor the chat and answer as many questions as we can. In the example we just saw, we went over how we could describe points to the computer to draw a line. And some of you might be wondering what the code for drawing a line actually looks like. So let's go over that. This is what we would write to tell the computer to draw a line between the point 0, 4 and the point 6, 4. And you might not be used to this way of writing, so let's break it down. The first part, the word line, is a function. And functions are actions that we want the computer to do. The second part is this list of numbers that you see inside of the round brackets. These are parameters. Parameters are information that we need to give the computer so that it can do the action. And the parameters go inside round brackets. And finally, we have a semicolon. The semicolon is used to mark the end of the action. So as we start writing code, we're going to be seeing this pattern over and over. And this brings us to the next important point to keep in mind. Computer instructions follow the same pattern. The pattern, as we just went over, is to write the function and then the information you need for the computer to carry out this action inside round brackets, and then a semicolon at the end. So we're getting close to the part where we will actually start writing some code, and there's just a few more notes to go over. The first one is, in the examples that we've seen so far, the grid size we've been using is 6 wide and 6 long. For the drawing that we will be creating today, we are going to work with a canvas size that is 400 by 400. We could have chosen a different size, but we're just going to use this one because it works for what we want to draw today. Another note is some of you who maybe had time to prepare for the session might have already signed up for the p5.js editor. That's a very good editor and I like using it, but it's a little bit more advanced, so we will not be using that today. Instead, we will be using the Khan Academy editor. This editor has a few built-in tools that will help us move through the session faster and get more done in the time that we have. So when we go to the editor, we will see something like this, and I wanted to point out some sections. On the left here is where we will write code. And as we add lines of code, we will see the drawing section on the right be updated automatically. If we make a mistake, we might see an error message appear here instead. That's pretty much all we need to know about the editor for now, which means it's time to start writing code. First, I'm gonna do one more quick reminder to use the Zoom chat for questions. And now we can open the Khan Academy editor. You should see a link in the chat. Please click on it to open the editor. I will do the same. You might have to scroll down a little bit, and once you do, you'll be able to get to the part where we can write our code. So let's do something we're familiar with to practice. Let's draw a line. To do this, I'm going to write line, and then the round bracket, 200, comma, 0, comma, 200, comma, 400. When we do that, you'll see a line that goes along the middle of your canvas. Feel free to try that on your editor. If I click on any of the numbers inside the round bracket, I'll see a little box appear at the top. This is called the scrub tool, and we can use it to easily change the value of a coordinate by clicking on it and dragging. So if you look on your Zoom screen, you would see me doing this. I'm going to give you a moment to try it on your own. The goal for today is to have created a portrait drawing at the end of the session. And one shape that we can draw to help us with this is an oval shape. So let's go over how we would draw that. To draw an oval, we use a function called ellipse. And what we need to put in the round brackets is the x and y coordinates of the center of the ellipse and also the width and the height of the oval. So if we go back to the editor, we can write an ellipse. I'm going to use 200, comma 200, which is in the center of the canvas, and 100, comma 200. Close the bracket and semicolon. And I can use the scrub tool. I'll use it on the width to make the face a little bit rounder, like this. I'll give you a few moments to try that on your editor. Some of you might notice that now that we've drawn the ellipse, it seems like part of the line that we drew at the beginning is missing. This is because we drew the ellipse on top of the line, and the ellipse is filled with the color white. So the line is still there. It's just that part of it is hidden behind the ellipse. One thing we might want to do is change the color that we are using to fill shapes. And there's a function that we can use for that, and it's called fill. So if I go to the editor and start writing out fill, as soon as I write the first round bracket, the line will complete automatically. And I see another small little box appear. And when I hover over it, it opens the color picker tool. We can use this tool to set the color that we want to fill shapes with. You can click and drag. I'm going to keep it somewhere here, which is a red color. Once I've done this, I don't see the color inside the ellipse being updated. And this is because the computer reads our code from top to bottom. So after we chose a color to fill our shapes with, we haven't drawn any additional shapes. And if we wanted to use this to fill the color inside of our ellipse, we need to move the fill line so that it shows up before the ellipse line. I will do that. And now we can see the inside of the ellipse has a different color, and we can click on any number inside the fill line to set a color for the face. I'll give you a few moments to do that. One thing we can draw next is some eyes. To draw the eyes, we're going to use an ellipse shape again. The first thing I'll do is add a fill line to set a color that I want to use for the eyes. I'm going to go with the color white. And then I'll write an ellipse for the eyes. I'll use 200, 200, 50, 50. And I can use the scrub tool again to move the eye so that it's a little bit higher and also move it to the left, like this. Once you are happy with the position and size of your eye, you can copy the line that we used for the left eye. And if we put it as the next line of code, we won't see anything because we are drawing an ellipse that's exactly on top of the one that we just drew. So what we can do is use the scrub tool on the first number, which is the x coordinate, and drag it so that it appears as the right eye. I also want to add some smaller oval shapes inside the eyes. So to do that, I'm going to use the fill function again. And I'll use the color black this time. You can use whatever color you prefer. Some of you might be wondering what the numbers are inside the fill function. These three numbers are called RGB codes, and RGB stands for red, green, blue. And RGB codes is just a way that the computer uses to describe colors. Some of the ones that are easier to remember are the RGB codes for white, which is 255 all the way through, and the RGB color code for black, which is 0 all the way through. So once I've set the fill color to black, I can copy the ellipse that we used for the left eye. And then I can use the scrub tool to adjust the width and the height of the eye and make it fit inside the white part. Something like this. And if I'm happy with the way it looks, I can copy that line and use the scrub tool to match that onto the right eye. I'll give you a few moments to try that on your editor. So far, we have written less than 10 lines of code, but it's already starting to become harder to keep track of which part of code goes with which part of the drawing. And so to help us with this, we're going to use something called code comments. A code comment is kind of like a note for yourself or for someone else who will read your code, and the computer ignores code comments. So it doesn't have to follow any of the patterns that we went over earlier. It's just a note to yourself, and it can help you label sections of your code to keep it organized. To write a code comment, we use 2 slashes. That marks the beginning of the comment, and then we can write the rest of our comment. Let's practice this by adding some comments for the different sections of code that we have so far. I'm going to add a comment for the face. I'll add another comment for the eyes on line 5, and a third comment for the iris shapes that we just drew. That's looking better. Another way that we can keep our code organized is to have empty lines in between sections of code. And this just makes it a little bit easier to read the code that we wrote in case we need to go back later and make changes. I'm going to add a space in between the face and the eyes section, and a space in between the eyes and the iris section. And I'll give you a moment to try that on your editor as well. The next thing we can do is draw a nose. So I will add a new section and a comment for the nose. I'll write the fill function, and I'll leave it as red for now so that it stands out against the rest of the face. And I'll use an ellipse shape again. 200, 200, 15, 15. And these are just my best guess at a number. I can use the scrub tool after I write it to move the nose in a way that I like. And maybe make it a bit wider. Once I've done that, I can go back to the fill line and click on a number and then set a different color for the nose. I'll use that one. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is draw a map. Again, I'll add a code comment. I will choose a fill color. I'm going to go with white. And I will use an ellipse shape. And then I can go and use the scrub tool. The mouth down. That looks okay, but the face looks a little bit surprised. So I'm going to add another ellipse shape to cover the top part of the mouth so that it looks more like a smile. To do that, I'm going to set the fill color to match the color that we used for the face. I'm going to go back up. Good thing these sections are labeled now. I can find it easily. I'm going to copy that line. And then I'll copy the ellipse line that we just used for the mouth. And I'll use the scrub tool to make it shorter and to move it up. Okay. So now it would be nice if we could get rid of the outline on this ellipse shape that we just added because it's a little bit distracting. One way we could do that is if we set the outline color to be the same as the face color, or we could also use a function called no stroke. So that's what I will do. I'm gonna go to the beginning of the mouth section and I'm gonna write no stroke like this. There's no space in between the words and the letter S is uppercase. And that gets rid of the outline that was on the ellipse and it kind of allows the shape to blend in with the rest of the face. So that's looking better. Okay, so far we've used a lot of ellipse shapes to draw a face. And what other shape might we use to continue adding to our drawing? I think we could use a rectangle shape if we wanted to add a neck. So the function to draw a rectangle shape is called rect. I'm gonna add that. I'm gonna start with a comment for the neck. And then I'll write rect. And the information that we need for the rect function is the X and Y coordinate of the top left corner of the rectangle, and then the width and the height. I'm gonna guess 200, 200, 60, 60. And I can use the scrub tool to center the neck and move it down. Okay, before we keep going, I wanted to mention if it feels like the session is moving a little bit fast, that's okay. We are trying to cover a lot of things in the time that we have, and we are recording the session. So once the session is over and the recording is available, you will be able to go back and watch at your own pace to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Okay, so we started drawing the neck and we can see that it blocks a little bit of the outline of the face. One way we could work around this is if we move the neck section so that it is drawn before the face. And another thing we could do is to remove the outline that surrounds the face. So I'm gonna go do that. I'll go back to the face section and I'll use the no stroke function again. And now the rectangle that we use for the neck blends in with the rest of the face, which looks better. Okay, if we wanted to draw a bit of a round shape at the bottom of the neck, we could do this by using an ellipse again. I will do that. 200, 300, 100. Okay, that's a little bit too big. I can use the scrub tool to move it down and also to adjust the height and the width. Okay. I'll give you a few moments to try that on your editor. And I don't want to go over time by trying to cover too much. So I will copy some parts of code in the chat that you can use on your editor to see how we might add the other parts of the face. Okay, and all these bits that I will share in the chat are using shapes that we already went over. So it's not going to feel like anything new. Okay, let's try. Yeah.
Edna, so sorry. So there is a comment in the chat to slow a bit down. So if there is any particular functions that you missed or anything, can you please put them in the comments so we will address those?
Yeah, okay, sounds good. I will take a pause here and if anyone wants to mention a part that they want to go over again, we can do that.
Thank you.
And for now, most of the code that we've written so far is visible on your screen, and hopefully that helps. As a quick review, we've used a lot of ellipse shapes. We used an ellipse shape to draw the face, and we used ellipse for both of the ovals that are the eyes. We use the ellipse for the nose, and we use 2 ellipse shapes to draw a smile. When we went to draw the neck, that was the first time that we used the rect function, which is a rectangle. And then we added another ellipse to make it look round a little bit at the bottom. Okay. If we wanted to draw ears, I'm going to share that little bit of code. I'll put this in the chat so we don't spend too much time writing the individual numbers down. So you can take this bit of code and put it on your editor. If you want, you can try using the scrub tool to play around with the position of the ears a little bit. For the ears, we also use the ellipse function. We're using that a lot in our drawing today. Let's say we wanted to draw some hair next. There's a lot of different hairstyles, so there's a lot of ways that we could do that. For now, we are going to use a rectangle shape and an ellipse shape to draw sort of straight long hair. So if I were to write the code for that at the bottom, it would cover the face, which we don't want. So what we need to do is have the hair be drawn before the rest of the face. And I'm going to copy the section in the chat. And then I will move this code section to the top of our code. That's looking better. Since we're here anyway, we can take a moment to delete the line that we drew at the beginning because that was just for practice. And you might notice I chose a pretty dark color for the hair. You can change it if you like, but you might notice the outline of the ellipse, and it's a little bit distracting. So we can use the no stroke function again in the hair section to remove that outline. I'll give you a little bit of time to try that if you want. Another thing that we can draw with what we have learned so far is maybe the top of a shirt or the shoulders. So I will copy it on my editor and then I will share that on the chat so you can experiment with it. So I have this ellipse shape that looks like a shirt, but it's covering the bottom of the neck that we drew. So to fix that, we can move the section of the shirt to be drawn before the neck. And now we have a little problem, which is the ears and the neck look the same color as the shirt. So we can fix this by adding the fill function at the beginning of the neck section. And we can use the same color that we did for the face. I'm going to copy that line. And that fixes the issue we were having with the shirt color. Okay. I think this is a good place to pause for now. And I will talk about this section called documentation that you can see if you scroll lower on the Khan Academy editor. This is a useful section because it has links to descriptions of functions that you can use in your drawing. As you can see, there's the ellipse function, we use that a lot. There's the rect function. We also use the line at the beginning to practice. We didn't use any triangles in our drawing, but we could, maybe if we wanted to draw eyebrows or something in the background. And the triangle function takes 3 points, the X and Y coordinate for the 3 corners of the triangle. So if you wanted more info on that, you could click on the link in the editor. There's also a function that might be useful called arc, and you can use that to draw part of an oval shape, not the full oval shape. Lower down in smaller text, you might see this function called curve. I used this function when I was making the drawings for the title page. It's a little bit more advanced, but if you wanted to try it, you can click on this link and experiment with it. I want to also say, as a reminder, most of you probably are not signed up on the Khan Academy editor. You could sign up to be able to save your drawing and create more drawings. Before you do that, it's a good idea to save everything that we have written so far and copy it somewhere temporary, maybe a Word document, or you could use this online notepad. I'll copy it in the chat. So you could copy everything you've written by using the right click copy or Command C if you're using a Mac. And then you would open your Word document or this online notepad and right click and paste or Command V if you're on a Mac. And this way you have everything that we have written so far saved so that when you go and sign up on the Khan Academy, you don't lose your progress. If you wanted to sign up, you would go to the top right, and instead of Edna, you would see the word sign up, and that's where you would click to sign up on this editor. Okay. So we are almost nearing the end of the session, and I wanted to say good job to everyone. Congratulations on making it this far. As a recap of what we went over, we talked about some important ideas to help us use JavaScript, and then we used it to draw shapes. We created a simple portrait drawing with the shapes that we learned how to draw. And we learned how to use the Khan Academy Code Editor, which has some very useful tools like the scrub tool, the color picker. We also talked about where we can look for more information on the shapes that we did not go over today. If you like the session and you want to do more with what we learned, you might be wondering what's next. The first thing I can say is you can keep practicing. You can do this by making changes to the drawing we made today, try to improve it. And along those lines, you could challenge yourself. Maybe think of what objects you could draw in the background, or you want to try different hairstyles. Maybe you don't want your face to be looking straight ahead, but maybe it's looking up and to the side a little bit. That could be a way to challenge yourself. If you signed up for the P5.js editor, as I said before, it's a little bit more advanced. It doesn't have the scrub tool or the color picker tool. So that could be another way of challenging yourself, is to learn how to use the other editor. If you have any questions about what we learned today or comments or feedback, you can send them to the email that I will write in the chat. And I wanted to go over one more thing. There's a really cool contest. If you are a student in the US, you probably are able to sign up. I'm going to show you the web page. We will send a link in the chat for those of you that might be interested, but just to go over it quickly, this contest is organized by a group called Code Art, and it's called Code Yourself. It's open to students in the US from grade 3 to 12. The deadline is February 17th, so there's still a lot of time to sign up if you wanted. And these are some examples of what students have submitted in the past. So you can get a lot of inspiration and just neat drawings to look at on this website. So I highly encourage you to sign up if you can. Otherwise, that is all that we are going to cover today. Hopefully you enjoyed the session. I realized I was going a little bit fast at the beginning. I was too excited and wanted to cover too many things, but hopefully it worked out in the end. Thank you for participating. I also want to say thank you to Supriti and Daria for monitoring the chat and helping with the session. If you signed up for another session, the registration link for Zoom should be in your email. And that's all I had. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Just a last quick thing. Thanks everyone for Edna, especially, as well as Jerry and Smriti for leading it. Again, if you have any questions for Edna, what are the next steps? If you do not follow, as she already shared with you her email ID, but if you have moving on, right? If you have any more questions, just as a seeking guidance from her on where you can take it, feel free to reach out to her on that email address, or as well as if you're planning to reach us on ng-ywit-questions@netapp.com, please do mention the session or the session lead that you have questions for. So we can direct your questions to the specific lead and they will be able to answer. Thanks, everyone.